Right off the top, let's start with breaking news from the high seas. This morning, Kiev's security agency released video of detained Russian tanker Nema that it says was used to block off the Kerch Strait in November's naval clashes between Russia and Ukraine. The seizure all happened as the Russian-flagged vessel allegedly blocked the passage of Ukrainian Navy ships through the Kerch Strait into the Russian Sea of Azov. Right now, you're about to see, there it is, the video by the Ukraine National Forces as they circle and detain the ship and troops board to seize it. There are reports right now that 7 Russian citizens were detained in this process. They have since been released. To discuss now this and more, we're being joined by author and historian Jeremy Kuzmarov. Jeremy, good to see you. So many people had hoped that the Ukraine had taken a less hostile attitude towards Russia, but with the recent election of their new leader, but then this recent detaining of this Russian tanker shows I don't think a lot has changed. Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of Zelensky's rhetoric was hostile towards Russia, and Zelensky has the new Ukrainian president, he has a close connection with the warlord Ihor Kolomoisky, who's been, funding a lot of the so-called anti-terrorist operations in eastern Ukraine. So Zelensky's rhetoric, of hope and change may have been somewhat illusory.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably either under or overestimated him since, he's a comedic actor there. But it looks like more of the same. So let's move over to something that's happening a little later today with congressional hearings here in the U.S. About the future of the START treaty, widely considered, a breakthrough in nuclear arms control between the U.S. and Russia. Do you think this landmark treaty is going to survive? Especially, we saw the Trump administration tank the INF treaty, another huge treaty. I mean, it's all being undermined. Are we going to see the survival of this one?
It appears that we won't. It's unlikely to survive, largely because of the influence of John Bolton, who's playing a major role in the Trump administration. And Bolton has a long history of opposing arms control agreements with Russia. He was involved with the Bush administration's pullout of the ABM treaty, ballistic missile treaty in 2002, that ignited an arms race. And it's said that Bolton has mocked the Church of Arms Control, and that there's no arms control treaty he likes. Now, the Trump administration is saying they want to renegotiate a new treaty with China, but this is very unrealistic because China has a very small number of nuclear weapons compared to Russia and the United States, and would want to set a very low bar that the United States would never agree to. So that's mere rhetoric, I think.
So you think that's either moot point, or do you think it's kind of distraction by them bringing up China?
I think it's just a distraction to think, oh, Trump has a plan and he's going to get a better deal. But in reality, the agenda is the agenda of the so-called military-industrial complex that wants a new arms race. So there'll be massive spending on nuclear weapons and new missiles and arms. The New START treaty, when it was first signed in 1991, there were 10,000 deployable nuclear weapons that the United States had, and it was cut. The treaty caps the number to 1,550. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And if the treaty, expires, then there'll just be an orgy of spending on nuclear weapons.
And now, speaking about spending, there are a lot of people in Congress who have previously voted to uphold and obviously respect the START treaty. You mentioned John Bolton. He's expressed nothing but hostility for the START and INF treaties. Ultimately, how do you think he might influence the outcome of not only today's hearing, but the future of any arms treaties?
Well, I think many in the Pentagon feel that the treaty is good for U.S. national security because it has, within the treaty, it calls for inspections of Russian weapons systems. So it allows for transparency. The United States could monitor what the Russians are doing. And, there is fear that Russia is developing new nuclear weapons, and that could be controlled. So even the Pentagon thinks it's a good treaty. But Bolton is, and the, neocon, Trump's very contradictory because he fashioned himself as an isolationist. But then he promoted all these neoconservative war hawks who hate arms control treaties and just want to ratchet up a new arms race. And they seem to have the major influence on policy. And Trump is often, not listening to Congress and asserting executive authority.
Yeah, absolutely. He said, he campaigned on draining the swamp, and it looks like he keeps bringing in Swamp Thing. So that hasn't much changed in Capitol Hill. And with the Mueller hearings on Russiagate yesterday, that's all concluded. How do you view this political climate will play into how U.S.-Russia arms controls and the overall relationship? How do you think it's going to play out?
Well, I think the Democrats are trying to keep alive the Russiagate saga and this narrative of Trump colluding with Putin, and I think that bodes ill for the future of U.S.-Russian relations because they've created a very poisonous climate. And in the 1980s, there was a huge movement calling for the abolishment of nuclear weapons and calling for arms control treaties, and a lot of it was driven by people on the left, liberals. But now a lot of liberals are because they disdain Trump, they're buying into this Russiagate narrative, and they're taking a very negative view about Putin and Russia, and they're not speaking out against, for instance, Trump's withdrawal of the INF treaty, and they're not speaking out in favor of more robust arms control treaties or better relations between the U.S. and Russia, and that bodes very ill for the future.
All right, we will leave it right there. As always, appreciate your expertise on all of this stuff. Jeremy Kuzmarov, thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.